Welcome back to the Our Invite podcast. My name is Nima.
I'm Aaron.
And today we're joined by a very special guest, the CEO and president of Cleveland Clinic, Florida, Dr. Barsoum. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. It's a real pleasure.
Thank you.
Really appreciate you taking time out to be here with us. We know there's a lot going on right now. But if you can, just introduce yourself and your role here at Cleveland Clinic, Florida.
Sure. So my name is Wael Barsoum. I'm a orthopedic surgeon, and I'm also the CEO and president of Cleveland Clinic, Florida. I still actively practice orthopedic surgery. I specialize in hip and knee replacements. Okay. Do a fair amount of publishing in that space as well. And in addition, I get to kind of be in charge of our health system here in Florida, which is terrific.
Awesome.
So Cleveland Clinic recently been named second best hospital in the world by Newsweek. How are you guys keeping that standard up year after year?
You know, that's a great question. I think, I got to spend 20 years in Cleveland before I moved down here 5 years ago.
Okay.
And every time I step into the halls of the Cleveland Clinic up north, I'm amazed. I mean, the place it's truly awe-inspiring. It's just an amazing place. And I think the reason that it's so impressive is because everybody shows up every day wanting to be their best and thinking about how do we get better. It's always important to be great at what you do, but it's equally important to think about how do we get better, how do we push the envelope, what's next, and how do we lead the way. And if you look historically at companies that have succeeded over time, they're the companies that expanded in difficult times, right? When during the recession, the companies that invested in research and development are the companies that continue to do well for the next 20, 50, 100 years. So it's kind of the same thing in healthcare. If you really want to be the best at what you do, you can never settle and say, well, we're good enough. Because everybody's nipping at your heels. I'll tell you, we're nipping at number one. So that's what you want.
For sure. So obviously there is competition. How do you deal with the competition to become, the number one? Yeah,
I think competition's a good thing. I think it's a good thing not only in healthcare, but in everything. I mean, imagine if there was only one company that made cars or one company that sold cell phones.
No standard of excellence.
There'd be no standard of excellence, right? And we saw that actually frequently in things like cable TV providers, right, or internet providers, where your community might only have one option. So you kind of got substandard care and you paid way too much money for it. All of a sudden, Apple TV and Fire Sticks come around.
Everyone's on YouTube.
Yeah, everyone's on YouTube. That's exactly right. And the cost is way down and the quality is excellent. So it's no different in healthcare. Competition in healthcare makes us all better. I'm grateful for the fact that we have high-quality providers that surround the Cleveland Clinic because it makes us here in Florida push to be better. It makes them push to be better. And in the end, who wins? The patients, the caregivers, right? And that's really what we're focused on.
So did you ever plan on becoming a CEO and president? Was that in your 20-year plan?
Yeah, that's a good question. I always wanted to be a leader in whatever I did.
Okay.
So, when my freshman year in high school, I was vice president. My freshman year in college, I was vice president of my class. I became president of my fraternity in college. As a sophomore, I became president of the Interfraternity Congress when I was a junior. So I know this is, kind of right up you guys' alley, given where you guys are in life. And then, it's always been something that was of interest to me. I like leading people. When I went into healthcare, when I went into orthopedic surgery, initially my goal was to become a department chairman somewhere and to chair an orthopedic department. And over time, for lots of different reasons, it turned out that I ended up becoming an administrative leader. But I still take my clinical work extraordinarily seriously, and it is still really, I think, the crux of what I think about and dream about, every day. And for me, being in healthcare, I actually think it makes it easier for me to be a better healthcare CEO because I'm still actively involved in patient care.
You mentioned high school and undergrad. If we were to go back and we were to talk to your friends and professors and we're like, who is Dr. Barsoum?
Yeah.
What would they say?
They'd probably say that I'm a pretty passionate guy, that I work hard, and that I have a lot of fun, and I'm a very loyal person. I think, it's interesting. Some people see loyalty as a weakness. Some people see it as a strength. I personally see it as a strength.
course.
And people that I feel give of their all every day, I think you ought to be very loyal to them. The two things that make me crazy in the world, and this is from high school and college, are people that don't work hard and dishonesty. Those two
I'm
things,
with you on that.
they just drive me crazy, and they're hard for me, honestly, to forgive. And I just don't align with those folks. So those are the things that I look for in the people that I want to align with and the people that I build teams with. If they're hardworking and they're honest to the core, I think you have the makings then of a successful group of friends or a successful group of leaders that create a team that becomes exponentially stronger than the individual.
Yeah.
So I guess my question is, how did your team that you have here, did you use those same parameters to build the team that you have?
Yeah, absolutely. And I was actually very lucky because when I came here 5 years ago, we had one hospital.
Okay.
Last year, we added 4 additional hospitals and about 30 outpatient sites. So we went from 3,000 caregivers to 11,000 caregivers, literally at the stroke of midnight, January 1st, 2019.
Wow.
We increased the number of hospital beds we had by a factor of 7 at the stroke of midnight. It was amazing.
Wow.
So I had a real benefit in that I was able to build my own leadership team. I didn't inherit somebody else's. So Rob Lord, our president at Cleveland Clinic Martin Health, who's a wonderful guy, he says it very well. He says, Martin Health didn't join a regional healthcare system. We helped create one. And it allowed us to build our team. So we took from the very best from around the system and created a executive leadership team that is made up of, probably just as many women as men.
That's good.
Just as many folks from the Caribbean that are African American, that are Caucasian, that are Latin American, trying to represent all of the folks that we lead and all the patients that we care for. So our leadership team is incredible in that it is truly representative of the patients that we care for and the caregivers that we lead. And I think that brings a completely different perspective to the table when we're dealing with challenging issues.
Do you think you have to have a certain personality to be able to sit where you're sitting at?
I don't know that it's a certain personality. I think different organizations need different kinds of leaders at different times.
Okay.
And I think most great leaders will tell you that, they happen to be in the right place at the right time for the type of leader that they are. I'll give you some direct examples from the Cleveland Clinic. So the Cleveland Clinic has gone through phases where we had leaders that were very directive, very prescriptive. The Cleveland Clinic was established over 99 years ago, and it came out of World War I medicine.
Okay.
So it was very militaristic, and our first leaders were like that. And the clinic actually had a little bit of a rocky history at times where financially it wasn't doing very well, and it needed a leader. It needed a CEO that could come in and say, "Look, this is not a democracy. This is how we are going to run the Cleveland Clinic, and I know best, and get in line, follow me. Otherwise, sorry, this isn't the right place for you." Other times, we have leaders that say, and I would tell you right now, our leader today, Tommy Mihaljevic up in Cleveland, is the kind of leader that I think really values strong teams and empowers strong teams. And as the organization becomes larger and is a true global entity today, you have to have folks that you can depend on to kind of lead their part of the organization.
Of course.
And we'll do it in a caring, empathetic way that aligns with the organizational priorities and the organizational goals. So I do think that individual characteristics play a role in whether or not you are the right leader for a specific organization at that time.
Okay.
And I think my style is probably a little bit of a combination of being directive when I need to be directive, but really trying to engage as many people as I can in an appropriate decision that benefits the organization.
I was gonna say, like you said, it takes a different person to fit. Every person, different personalities, different institutions. How did you know you were the right fit for Cleveland Clinic?
Yeah, I don't know that I knew. It's like, fortunately, somebody at the Cleveland Clinic knew it. Is how I would look at it. I grew up in Cleveland. I was born in the Middle East. I was born in Jordan, lived in Egypt for a little while, and then when we first moved here to the United States, we moved around at different places, including Oklahoma and North Dakota and in Cleveland. But most of my life from middle school on was in Cleveland. So I grew up with this incredible healthcare system in my backyard. And I knew, even as a kid, that if I went into medicine, the two places that I wanted to work were either the Cleveland Clinic or Mass General Hospital. Okay. And, at that time, I always thought of Massachusetts General Hospital, Harvard, that's got to be, the greatest healthcare system in the world. Today, I actually think the Cleveland Clinic is the best healthcare system in the world.
Change your mind?
Yeah, but Mass General is still great. They still do a great job, but that was always my goal, is if I'm going to go into medicine, I want to be at the best healthcare system that I can possibly be at. So I always knew that the Cleveland Clinic was one of those places. And I would tell you that over my last 25 years there, between residency and then working there as a surgeon, it has never disappointed me from that perspective. This never-ending desire to be the very best that we can be is incredible. Even this morning, our executive team, our healthcare system executive team, which is a global team, was meeting, and everything that comes out of people's mouths in that room is, we're going to do this because it's the right thing to do. Okay, right? And that's a great way to run an organization.
So when you stepped into your role, what were your main goals that when you're done, what did you want to complete?
Yeah. So, when I got here 5 years ago, I would tell you that I inherited a fantastic community hospital. Okay. That's what Cleveland Clinic, Florida was. We were a single 155-bed hospital that did very high-quality community care. And we were slowly starting to pivot to being more of a tertiary quaternary care hospital, meaning taking care of higher complexity patients. To get us there, we needed a clear strategy. And one of the things that I talk about a lot when I think about kind of coming into an organization is that you have to have a clear plan to get from point A to point B. I once read this little quote that said, "A want without a plan is a wish." And it's true, right? If you don't really have a plan to get you there, then you're just, hoping that you randomly arrive to your end point. True. And that doesn't happen very often. How many people win the lottery? So I think that was part of it. So the first thing I did was create a local leadership team that I really depended on and really trusted, and said, all right, we're going to spend the first 6 months of my time down here, and we're going to define a strategic plan for Cleveland Clinic, Florida. And I felt at that time that what we were really missing in Southeast Florida was a gold standard tertiary quaternary care academic medical center. Okay. And that we could fill that. Oh, and why could we do that? Because when I say Cleveland Clinic to you, most people immediately think about high quality, tertiary quaternary care academic medical center. So why would we not try to kind of fill our destiny, right? That's what people expect from us. That's what we ought to be. Yeah. So we focused on areas to grow, like digestive diseases, transplant, complex orthopedics, neurosciences, heart and vascular care, cancer care. Those were things that I felt people would align with the Cleveland Clinic brand. So those are the areas that we grew dramatically. Okay. In 5 years, we've gone from 1.5 oncologists to 17 oncologists today, right? Our orthopedic surgery group is one of the most published orthopedic surgery groups in the entire country, if not in the world. Our colorectal surgery and general surgery groups are amongst the very best in the world. Our pulmonary and endocrinology groups here are, again, amongst the very best in the world. So that was a goal, right? Is if you're going to do something, be great at what you do. And if you're not going to do it really, really well, then don't do it at all. Yeah. So good point. We made some of those decisions as well. We said from the very beginning, when I got here, we're not going to be a children's hospital.
Yeah.
We have great children's hospitals around us. There's no reason for us to try to create another children's hospital that isn't going to make pediatric care any better.
I understand.
Right? So we were able to not use any resources in that and put them all in the areas where there was clear demand and clear desire. So that was really the goal, was to slowly take the organization from being a really high performing community hospital and establish instead a premier tertiary quaternary care academic medical center. And I would tell you today that we've been very successful in making that transition.
That's awesome to hear. Now, I want to say a sentence and I want you to finish it for me. I'm going to see if you can remember.
Okay.
When you're looking to grow, you can't.
When you're looking to grow,
You can't.
take your foot off the gas.
There you go.
That's right.
So you had mentioned that previously before. And
I didn't know it was my quote you were going to say.
Yeah.
That's right.
Caught you off guard.
What brilliant person said that?
So do you think that statement is missing nowadays in the kids coming up right now? Do you think that?
I don't think so. I think, everybody's is an individual, right? I mean, I hate this thing about Generation X, Generation Y,
We agree.
the millennial. Yeah, I mean, look at what you guys are doing. I mean, you're young, 3 young people sitting in here, doing this interview. You're clearly motivated. You're clearly driven to be great at what you do, right? That doesn't fall into the categories that people have created around
True.
these different generations. I have found that some young folks that we work with are the brightest, hardest working people I've ever met. And we have some administrative fellows here that have blown, the roof off of, what our expectations were from administrative fellows. We have young caregivers that work here. One of the things that we really focus on is growing our caregivers and giving them opportunities to expand their education and take on bigger roles. Young people that have said, I want to do more, help me create a path to play a bigger role at the Cleveland Clinic.
Yeah.
And we do that. We actively do that. So I don't think it's missing in young people today. I think to be a great leader, you have to be able to identify which folks have the capability to be great at what they do and have the drive and the motivation. To me, that's a characteristic that I have to have in identifying folks.
Yeah.
And then, and hopefully I'm right, because you're going to put resources into those people. Just like I told you, we didn't put resources into building a children's hospital because we wanted to be great at adult care.
Yeah.
It's the same thing here. You have to be thoughtful about where you put your resources in your human capital so that you're truly investing in folks that want to be invested in and want to make a real difference in the organization that they serve, regardless of their age.
Like you said, like hard work, looking for those things in a person that you want to hire to work here. Do you think those things are easy to read in an interview? Because nowadays people are getting really good at giving great interviews, but then they don't perform well.
Yeah.
How do you go about seeing past that?
Yeah. So, it's funny when I look back, I was our fellowship director in Cleveland for hip and knee replacement for our hip and knee fellowship for 10 years. So I've read thousands of letters of recommendation. I've talked to hundreds of residency program directors, about their residents and who we should take, because we would take 4 people a year and we'd usually get maybe 600 or 700 applications for those 4 spots. So you've got to be pretty good at figuring it out.
Yeah.
So I will tell you, from my perspective, recommendations are really meaningful.
Okay.
And if you're not quite sure what you're reading, pick up the phone and call the person that wrote the letter, because there are sometimes little codes in the letters, for good or for bad. That's kind of how it works.
Yeah.
So do your homework and go the extra mile. I'm a big believer in hire slow and fire fast, right? If you have the right person, take your time, do your homework, make sure that they're right, invest in them. If you don't have the right person, then help them see that this is not the right place for them. And even when that's the case, still thank them for their service and be grateful for the work that they gave you. I mean, it may be that that's all they were capable of, but don't waste your energy or organizational energy on somebody that's not going to make the organization better. I think that's important. The last thing I would say is go with your gut instinct, right? I mean, it's your gut instincts that have gotten you as far as you guys have gotten, right? I mean, that's the reality. Right. So clearly, there's value in what your gut is telling you. So to some degree, do your homework, but follow your gut, right? I mean, if we all sat down and took, the SATs without doing any studying and just went with our gut instincts, we're all going to get 20% of the answers right. I mean, that's the reality. So you got to do your homework, as much of it as you possibly can, and then ultimately you may find that one person kind of speaks to you more than another.
Okay,
that's where you go.
So, what advice would you give to upcoming physicians, doctors in their healthcare field? What advice would you give them that you wish you would have had when you were coming up?
Yeah. So a couple of things. I think the first advice I would give is for folks that are thinking about the healthcare field, right? Okay. And that is, go for it. Okay. There's a lot of concern that people have today with healthcare changes and with healthcare reform. Yeah. Is healthcare a good field to be in? I would tell you that it's a phenomenal field to be in. Taking care of patients, there's no higher honor from my perspective than when somebody, trusts you with their health and trusts you with their care. I think the future in healthcare is wonderful. The quote challenges that people worry about, from my perspective, are opportunities to make us better at what we do. So that's exciting. Once you make that decision, and I think you could take this piece of advice and apply it to somebody who wants to go into engineering, wants to go into law, wants to be the world's greatest, manager somewhere, wants to be the world's greatest cashier, whatever you want to be. The advice that I would give is kind of enjoy the ride. Many times when you're a motivated individual, you're always thinking about, what is my next accomplishment in life going to be? Yeah. And you lose sight of the fact that getting to that accomplishment, that path, has thousands of points along the way that you can enjoy, right? So when I think back to when I was in high school, I was worried about, being a starter on, the teams that I played in, or, getting a great SAT score to get into a great college. When I got into a great college, I thought, do I have enough extracurricular activities to get into a great medical school? When I got into medical school, am I going to get the USMLE score that I need to get into orthopedic surgery? But the truth is, I really loved playing the sports that I played in high school. I loved, my Greek life in college, and I loved playing tennis in college and being active in college. But again, it was easy to kind of lose sight of the joy of the things that you were doing. And be so focused on the end goal. And the truth is that I think that's a mistake. You've got to enjoy the ride to getting you to where you want to be, because it's a fun ride.
How do you manage being a CEO and still practicing as a physician? I mean, you think you have enough on your plate.
Yeah.
What is free time?
Right. I don't sleep a lot. Very candidly.
Yeah, I read a funny fact that you take an espresso shot before you go to bed.
Yeah, I'll usually do a double espresso as soon as I sit down for dinner, and that wakes me up consistently at 3:30 in the morning. And I'll get up at 3:30 and I'll do whatever work I need to do. I usually relax a little bit. I'll get out on my elliptical, or I'll do some CrossFit or something. Probably 5 days a week. But I like that. I mean, I like being busy. I like not sleeping a lot. Same. Not every, that's not natural for everyone, right? It's for some people say, my kids who are high school, 8th grade and second grade.
They're going to bed when you're waking up.
Oh yeah, my second grader is up, right? But my older two, they'll sleep till 1 o'clock in the afternoon if you leave them. So again, it's not natural for everybody to do that, but it works for me, and I think you got to kind of recognize what works for you. That's the first thing. The second thing is, when you really love something, when you're really passionate about it, it's not work, right? Yeah. It's what you want to do. When I get up at 3:30 or 4 or 5, whatever time I might wake up on a given day, I wake up and there's immediately something on my mind. What am I going to work on today? I'm going to review a paper for the Journal of Hip Surgery, or I'm going to review a business plan about expanding into another community, or I'm going to review, some publicly accessible data on a healthcare system that we're interested in talking to. I look forward to that stuff because I know that I'm going to come to work jazzed about the information that I got and what I'm going to do with that information. That's exciting to me. The other thing is as a surgeon, I love doing surgery. I love writing about it. I love reading about it. I love seeing the satisfaction in the face of my patients when they come in with a really complex problem and you got to fix it. I mean, that's really exciting. It's motivating. So I get pleasure out of all of those things. So to me, it doesn't become a job. It becomes this incredible opportunity to live life fully. Yeah, that's exactly right. And then I get to go home and see, these amazing kids that are just, they're the light of they truly are the lights of my life. They're phenomenal kids. And I have a great wife who does a great job, taking care of my kids. She's just recently started selling real estate, so she's having fun with that. I have to say, I've got a lot to be thankful for.
That's awesome. So how do you balance the whole family life with your career? I can imagine that. Yeah. It can be difficult at times.
That can be. And I have to tell you, if I look back, honestly, I've probably not done as good a job with that as I wish that I had.
Okay.
And I say that fully recognizing that I still probably don't do enough of it. And I need to do a better job with it. I'm spoiled because my wife is a great mom. And she kind of fills the gaps that I sometimes leave. She's very, very good at that. My kids are very attached to my wife and to me, I hope. So when we are together, it's high quality time.
Make sure she sees this part.
Yeah.
I'll send you this clip.
Exactly, sweetheart. That was for you. But I do think that's important, right? To develop that relationship. And one of the things that's been important to me as the father of 3 daughters is I want my daughters to grow up with a sense that hard work is important and a sense that if you work hard, success follows. I don't want them to ever feel like they have to depend on somebody else. I want them to be completely self-dependent. So I push all 3 of them. I push them academically. I push them they're all into performing arts. I push them to be the very best singers, the very best actors, the very best performing arts kids that they can be. And we support that. We want them to be great at those things. Again, it's no different than what I said before. If you're going to do something, make the effort to be great at it. So we do have kind of a family understanding that we all work hard at what we do.
Sure.
The time that we spend together is going to be meaningful time. There are some interests that we all share. We all love boating and jet skiing and kind of traveling to exotic locations. And we also have things that we don't share, right? I love playing the guitar. My kids don't really love playing the guitar. They like singing. They like going to musicals. That's exactly right. They like musicals. I'm not really into musicals unless my kids are in them.
Fair enough.
Or Hamilton, because I loved Hamilton.
Oh, your wife.
Yeah.
Oh, she's into it. You got to be into it.
Oh, yeah. So I'm trying. But I think that's how you balance it. Is you find the areas of mutual interest, you maximize that.
Okay.
But there are some things that are not that we won't compromise on. And if you're going to have an interest in something, my expectation is that you're going to work hard to be great at it.
Do you want your kids to go into healthcare?
I would love it if they did. It's funny that you asked that question because my oldest daughter is starting to look at colleges right now.
Yeah.
And I've told her you can go to any college you want. You can major in anything you want as long as you do all of your prerequisites for medical school.
You can do whatever you want, but you have to do your prereqs.
Yeah. And I'll tell you why. Because the things that she's interested in are highly competitive things.
Okay, so
she wants to be a movie star, right? She wants to be performing on the big screen.
Yeah.
She wants to be on Broadway. We all know you can be the most talented person in the world and still not win that lottery ticket.
Yes.
So I want to make sure that she has a background that she can depend on, that if that doesn't work out, that she can go to law school, she can go to dental school, she can go to medical school, or she can be a great architect or a great accountant. Whatever she wants to do, I'm fine with, but I just want her to have a backup that allows her to be fully independent and never have to depend on anybody else. She can depend on me as long as she wants, but that's it.
Do you think that being able to be more than a CEO, like I read you in a rock band?
Yeah.
So do you think those things, being able to live life outside your role has helped you become a better CEO?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when I was in high school, I had a great guidance counselor. His name was Mr. Schwab, and I remember him vividly. And he said to me, "You're going to go through," because he knew I wanted to be a doctor. He said, "You're going to go through the next 8 years of your life focusing on the sciences." Everyone that at that time that was going into medical school would major in biology or chemistry, and in college, he said, I want to challenge you to think differently, to do something else. Spend the next 4 years of your life before medical school focusing on something else. I have to admit, I didn't quite have the guts to completely go away from the sciences, so I chose to double major. So I majored in chemistry and religion, and my hope for doing that was to kind of exercise both the right side of my brain and the left side of my brain. That was my hope, and I do think that has paid off for me. And I continue to focus on music, and I played sports, and those things were all important to me. So I do think that trying to be well-rounded is important, and I think the reason that it's important is a couple things. A, it allows you to connect with more people. Yeah. Which as a leader is important, right? People want to feel a connection with you, and I want to feel a connection with them. So I think that's a big deal, and it also, I think, allows you to find successes in areas that you might not have otherwise found. So what do I mean by that? I can tell you, I was probably a better religion major than I was a chemistry major. I really loved physics, interestingly enough, and I did well with physics, but chemistry didn't come so easily to me. Okay. But the fact that I was crushing it in religion gave me a lot of confidence, and it made me proud of that. And my religion professors would tell me that, wow, you're bringing a completely different perspective to our classes, and we really like that. That was exciting to me, and it gave me a lot of confidence. Whereas if I was only focused on my chemistry degree, I might have kind of not had the same confidence. So I do think having some kind of high-level smattering of knowledge is important, but I still think at some point, to really be great at something, you've got to put the time and effort into it.
So how do you think your career as an orthopedic surgeon has helped you in your role now as CEO and help your leadership skills?
Yeah. So and I think in a lot of ways. Number one, so much of what we do in running hospitals is truly, directly taking care of patients, right? There's obviously a lot of other things, right? There's supply chain, there's finance, there's, when do you refinance your bonds? There's a lot of business sides to it, but the crux of what we do is take care of patients, right? That's really what it comes down to. So being active in that area, I feel like if I wasn't active in it, there'd be a big chunk of running a healthcare system that I would have very little direct experience with. So by doing this, I have really great direct experience in that. And the truth of the matter is, I've surrounded myself with people that fill my gaps really well. So our CFO is a brilliant guy. Our chief operating officer is a brilliant guy. Our executive administrator for our executive team is a brilliant woman. We really try to focus on making sure that the gaps that each one of us has individually are kind of symbiotically filled by somebody else that brings us strength in that area. And I think that's what makes our executive team work so well. So for me individually, not having the hands-on patient experience, I believe, would have left a big gap in my ability to be a strong leader.
And Cleveland Clinic, as we mentioned earlier, innovation and technology is big. Yeah. Why is that so important to you guys?
Well, I think it comes back to the question that you asked at the beginning. How do you stay kind of on the top of the hill? And if you really do want to stay at the top, you have to invest in research and innovation. One of the things that we're most excited about at the Cleveland Clinic here in Florida is the new research focus that we have in basic science research. We're taking over a large building that was supported by the city of Port St. Lucie and the state of Florida, and it's up in Port St. Lucie, and it's a huge, empty, basic research building. We think we're going to bring a lot of value to the city by hiring some of the top research minds in the country and bring them here to Florida. We're going to be doing a lot of cutting-edge research on virology, on immuno-oncology. That will allow us to do some of the most cutting-edge clinical trials in the country right here in Southeast Florida. Right? That's, I think, pretty exciting. So when you look at the ability to change the landscape of the quality of healthcare and access to the most cutting-edge technologies, that's what the Cleveland Clinic is going to be doing here in Southeast Florida. That's what we've started doing. That's what we're going to continue to do as we continue to grow, is you have to invest in that research and innovation, because without it, you won't be leading the way. You'll be a follower, and that's not in our DNA. Our DNA is to lead.
So what do you do to decompress? To enjoy yourself, relax? Well,
Have more espresso shots?
Do you have time
to
do that?
I do. I mean, I do. It's funny. I live about a half hour away from work, and people ask me all the time, wouldn't you want to live closer? And I don't. I mean, I like that 30 minutes in the car driving in. I like the 30 minutes in the car driving home. It's usually my only time that I'm alone, in the morning or in the evening. So I do like that. Usually once or twice a week, I try to take my kids to school, which is always action-packed and full of excitement. But it's usually it's fun. So I like that time on my own. I might catch up with a phone call or two, but usually I just try to listen to the radio and clear my brain a little bit. I love playing the guitar. I mean, that for me is, I'm not necessarily very good at it.
We should have told you to bring one,
Yeah.
put on a show.
You wouldn't have wanted to see it.
We're trying to get.
I play the violin, so we could have had it.
No, we're trying to get views.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You want viewers. You don't want me to chase them away. But that I do enjoy. My family and I, we really love water sports. We love jet skiing. I love scuba diving. We like traveling. That's always fun for us. And I'm a social person, by nature. Even if you gave me the option, would you rather kind of hang out alone at home, or would you rather go out with a group of friends? I almost always would choose go out with a group of friends. I like to be with my wife. I like to be with my kids. I don't really like being alone that much. That's maybe a little odd. I don't know, but that's just how I am. Is that right?
Yeah, sure.
That's just kind of how I am. So, and I like to be busy. So
that's why I can't. That's why I'm like, I'd rather work somewhere where it's like hectic, always busy, ready to go.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to just be to the side, just sitting down.
I like the action-packed time. Yeah. Even my lunches every day from 12 to 1. I leave. I go out to lunch, and I usually take 2 or 3 people with me. We make it a working lunch, because I know I usually get to work by call it 6:30 or 7 in the morning, and I'm usually not home before 8 or 9 at night. So that hour of getting out, kind of resetting, but doing it with somebody, to me is enjoyable.
I hear you.
So that's how I decompress.
Okay.
What's your definition of success? Everyone has a different definition for it.
I think really for me, you'd think I would have a good answer for this question.
No, you do.
Yeah.
Every answer is a great answer.
Just go with your gut.
All right. Yeah, I think you have to love what you do. You have to be excited. Wake up in the morning, eyes open. Are you thinking this is going to be a great day, or are you dreading the day in front of you? If you're thinking it's going to be a great day, then you're successful, right? If that happens more often than not, then you have found your success in life. For me, it's seeing a smile on a patient's face, knowing that I made their lives better. It's hearing from their family members, about how they can now walk together in the evening, how they can golf again, how they can play tennis. Bringing back kind of that joy in their lives, I think is important to me. It's knowing that I've been successful in raising my kids to be independent, productive members of society that are grateful for what they have, and whose goal it is truly to make the world a better place. That's one thing that I'll tell you, my wife and I have really focused on with our kids, is that you've been given a lot. Yeah. So we have high expectations for you, not just for you, but for what you're going to do in this world. We take them on medical missions almost every year. We expect them to give back. It has given them a completely different perspective on life. So, when I think of how I would define success, from my kids' perspective, it's seeing them be great members of society. From my professional perspective, it's taking care of more patients, relieving more suffering, leading an incredible organization, and today 11,000 caregivers that are grateful for what they get to do every day. It's improving the quality of healthcare in the communities that we serve. But ultimately, it's knowing that when you put your head down to go to sleep at night, that you left the woodpile a little bit bigger today. And I think that's kind of exciting.
So when it's all said and done, what do you want to be remembered for?
I want to be remembered for hopefully being a great dad that raised 3 incredible daughters who made a difference in the world. I think that to me would be the greatest, line on my tombstone that I could imagine. His kids made a difference. That would be pretty cool.
That's
Okay.
awesome. Yeah. So I know right now we're going through stuff in the world with the whole coronavirus. So I have to ask you this question about it. Bill Gates recently spoke on the coronavirus, and he said that healthcare systems need to be strengthened, supporting low-income countries to build robust health systems capable of defending people against outbreaks. Cleveland Clinic is a global health system. How have you guys been reacting to the whole coronavirus situation?
So I think that's a great question. I think the first thing is we're lucky in that we have 66,000 caregivers worldwide. So we've got a lot of really, really smart people that are thinking about this. We also have a culture that is very open and sharing. So as we come up with solutions, we're happy to share them with as many people and as many organizations that want them. This is not a time to try to establish a competitive edge. That doesn't make sense. So, when we started sensing that we would see cases in Florida, we immediately responded. So we have our mission control that meets every day, twice a day. That's just for Florida. We have a mission control with Cleveland as well. That is our global kind of mission control that meets every day, now twice a day. That is staying on top of things. We've been very public with what our capabilities are, with the fact that we're ready and willing to share with anyone, any healthcare provider that sends me a note or asks me a question. We'll give them anything we want, including pictures of how we're managing things here on our campuses, the signage that we have. Again, I think the key is transparency and openness and sharing best practices. This is not a time to try to establish yourself as being better than somebody else, because ultimately the world loses in that scenario. So I think that Bill Gates is right. It is true leaders lead by raising a tide, right? That's really what it is. I mean, a great leader doesn't distance themselves from everybody else. A great leader goes forward and brings everybody along with them. That's what I think the Cleveland Clinic is trying to do during times like this, during times of crisis. And I think we have some success in it, but there are just so many things going on right now around the world when it comes to coronavirus that it's clearly hard to kind of step forward and say we're the leaders, do exactly what we're doing, because again, it's rapidly evolving.
Exactly.
I don't know that anybody has all the right answers, but what we can do and what we should do and what we are doing is putting out to everybody what we're doing.
Yeah.
And happy to learn from other organizations what they're doing, and I think symbiotically trying to come to the right conclusions on how to manage a situation like this.
And to everybody that's asking, what should you be doing to stay healthy?
Yeah, so I would say a few things. Number one, if you're sick, if you have symptoms like the flu, self-quarantine. I mean, that really is important. Going to the grocery store or showing up to your doctor's office coughing all over the place is not the answer. Yeah. You're only going to spread the disease. Yes. And even if it's not coronavirus, which to be clear, 99.9% of the time it's not. It might be the flu. It might be the common cold. You're still putting people at risk. So when you have those kinds of symptoms, especially now, try to manage with a self-quarantine. That's probably the best thing you can do. The second thing I would say is if you do feel like you need to be tested, go to an emergency department. Go to an emergency department where you can be tested in a secure area by healthcare providers that are appropriately gowned and gloved and covered. I wouldn't necessarily encourage people to go to their family doctor and not have the appropriate precautions, because again, you're putting all of those patients that are sitting in the waiting room at risk when you're doing that. You're putting your doctor at risk and your nurses at risk. And the worst case scenario is now we have to self-quarantine all of our healthcare providers. Right? So really kind of follow those kinds of directions. So if you come to our campus here in Weston, for example, we have a whole setup that is outside. And it's meant very specifically to protect our hospital patients and our hospital caregivers from somebody that could be positive. So we test them outside. If they're healthy, we send them home, tell them we'll self-quarantine. We will follow up with you with your test results, where this is all hand in hand with the Florida Department of Health. And I think that's a great step forward. If somebody needs to be hospitalized, they're in isolation rooms so that they're not at risk of passing the disease on to other folks. So again, I mean, hospitals are a safe place to be for a patient that needs to be in a hospital.
Exactly.
They're not a great place to be if you don't need to be in a hospital. That's the advice I would give folks.
So you have a family, like we've mentioned before. Have you had that talk with them about the coronavirus?
Absolutely.
What have you been?
I tell them, wash your hands all the time. Safe space, 6 feet away. My girls are very touchy-feely girls. All their friends, they see each other, always hugging each other. I said, stop hugging each other. Don't share drinks. This is not the time to be doing that. You can love each other from a distance, which is great. I mean, I think it's great.
Through FaceTime.
That's exactly right. FaceTime is true. By the way, I mean, that's another great example is there are lots of groups, including the Cleveland Clinic, that we have Express Care Online, which is, and we've waived the costs associated with Express Care Online so that anybody can have access to a free virtual visit where screening can be done, and we can give people advice on what to do, what's the appropriate thing to do for your care. So having that safe space is important. Avoiding coughing in people's faces, sneezing in people's faces. I mean, really kind of good personal hygiene is important right now.
Sometimes common sense.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, if you think that maybe you don't want to hug this person, don't hug that person. And I think the other thing that's important is recognizing that although children don't usually get sick, thank God, from the disease, they can still very much have it and be carriers.
I was about to say, do you think, is it true that younger people are not bound to get the disease, or they're not
we don't necessarily know that they're not bound to get it, right? Because keep in mind, we only know who gets it if you get tested.
Correct.
But what we do know is that when they do get it, they tend not to get very sick. So I think it's especially important for grandparents, for example, who might be older, who might have more comorbidities, to, again, wave from a distance to grandkids. I love you. This doesn't mean I don't love you, but grandma and grandpa just need a few weeks before we're hugging again. And I think that's okay.
Do you think we're going to all be able to, how long do you think this is going to go for? Because it seems like it keeps getting worse. Do you think there's going to be a...
Well, I think there's a few things to keep in mind. I think, we have the benefit of learning from the experiences in China, in Iran, in Italy, in Germany, in France, in Japan, in terms of how each country managed the disease and managed the healthcare response. So in the United States, we have a very clear benefit from that perspective of having hindsight from watching what happened in other places. I think, seeing many large gatherings be canceled, although maybe heartbreaking for a lot of people, was clearly the right thing to do. And I think we're going to see benefits from that. I think that's important to recognize. I don't think there's anybody that can predict to you how long this is going to last. I think if we follow a similar path to what we're starting to see in other countries, hopefully it'll die off in several weeks. But then there's always the risk of reinfection. So we have to be cognizant of that. The good news is there are organizations, there are companies that are starting to see immunizations that may be starting early animal testing and then eventually human testing. So the entire scientific community, I think, is mobilized around this, which I do think is important. I also think that we are more prepared from a critical care capacity perspective. So to kind of put things into perspective, if you look at England, for example, Their national health system is excellent at managing issues like this, but they have 2.2 intensive care unit beds per 100,000 patients. We have 8. Right, so per 100,000 individuals, we have 8 ICU beds. So that obviously puts us in a better position if patients do require, intensive care, ventilators, things like that. So I think the key is to try to be proactive, to be prepared, to keep our caregivers healthy for as long as possible, hopefully forever, so that we can be there to take care of our patients. And to make sure that we're open, honest, and transparent about what we know and how to try to minimize the spread of the disease.
Awesome. So thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with us. I know you're super busy, especially during this whole pandemic now.
Yeah.
So do you have any last words for the people watching? Do you have any last messages?
I would, the last message I would probably leave you with, I touched on before. I think this is an incredibly exciting time to be in healthcare. Healthcare reform is coming. I mean, it's there. We've already started adopting some of the things, but we really do have a great opportunity to improve the quality of the healthcare that we provide and to do it at a lower cost. This whole shift toward value-based care is important. It's important not only for my generation and your generation, but it'll be important for your kids' generation, right? We have to leave the world a better place for them, and we have to leave our healthcare system as a better place. And if we continue to see healthcare inflation at a 4 or 5% rate every year, we will bankrupt the country with our healthcare costs. So we have to be proactive, and we have to see these, quote, challenges as opportunities. And we need to be more proactive about taking advantage of those opportunities. So I want to thank you guys for coming all the way over here.
Thank you.
Talking to me.
But before we end, there's one question. I know people are going to bash us if I don't ask.
Oh, boy.
Since we are student pharmacists, what do you think? How important is the role of pharmacists in Cleveland Clinic and in the rounds and everything in general?
It's huge. I mean, it's huge. I will tell you, I mentioned to you guys before that I go on medical missions, and I've said this very publicly. The medical missions that I've gone on, I personally find the most important member of the team is the pharmacist.
Really?
I mean, their knowledge of disease, of interchangeability between drugs, especially when you're talking about third world countries that may not have some of the drugs that we're accustomed to, or may run out of some of the drugs that we might be accustomed to, their ability to kind of react to that and substitute and understand the management of comorbidities and side effects is absolutely huge. One of the really exciting things I'm sure is here in the state of Florida, we've just expanded the scope of what pharmacists can do in terms of managing the flu. I actually think that we should continue to expand the scope of what pharmacists are able to do.
I was just about to say, a physician on LinkedIn a couple weeks ago mentioned to not let pharmacists diagnose and treat for the flu and strep throat, and to not make medicine a joke. That was their words.
Yeah. I don't know who that was. I can tell you that my personal belief and the belief of the Cleveland Clinic is that our caregivers should be working at the top of their licensure.
Yeah.
Meaning, as a pharmacist, the training that you have allows you to do a lot more than what we've presently been allowing pharmacists to do through licensure. And the truth of the matter is, until we get true top of licensure care for everyone, respiratory therapists, registered nurses, nurse practitioners, physician assistants, pharmacists, physicians, all of us, right? Until we can truly get top of licensure care, we are leaving resources on the table.
Yeah.
And that's not something that we can or should afford to do as a country.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
My
Really
pleasure.
appreciate
Thanks
your
for
time.
having me.
And thank you for everyone tuning in. My name is Nima.
Man.
And thank you for accepting our invite.